Right, good evening and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Major Applications Planning Committee. Councillor Labelling Committee Chairman. The live YouTube feed, I am told, is switched on, so this meeting is now being broadcast, as well as those who are in the room to hear our deliberations, of which there are not very many of you. There's only 3 apps, so I don't know if that's 3 groups, 1 per app, or you're just splitting up. Right, can I do apologies for absence first, please?
Councillor Higgins has given his apologies, and Councillor Camdale is substituting.
But we have neither.
Neither, so we'll see who turns up.
We'll just sort that one out as we go, I think. I expect one of them is going to appear through the door at some... Well, I'm not quite sure what's going on, so I'm not going to comment. Anyone got any declarations of interest? Can I have approval for the minutes of the meeting 22nd of Feb? Agreed, yeah, thank you very much. The agenda we're taking tonight is the one that was published by the Head of Planning, which has 3 items on it. They're all in Part 1, there are no Part 2s, so we're in public for the lot. There are no petitions, so there are no public speaking rights. Right. Can I remind, with the exception of the Head of Planning who needs a phone next to him, that all other phones should be switched off or at least to silent. And can I remind also that all speakers, please make sure you're near your microphones, because apart from those who need to hear it at that end of the room, there's a vibrant audience out there who on a Tuesday evening will be dying to hear every word of this, I'm sure. Okay, I'm going to move straight to item 6. This is 36 to 40 Rickmansworth Road. This is a deferral from the 4th of October, deferred for highway reasons. So Neil's presentation will concentrate almost exclusively on the highways, and I'm expecting to see what we had before, what's now changed, and what makes that good and allays members' concerns. And then we'll take it from there. So Neil, could you take us? Neil and Manhan, I presume, are doing a sort of double act.
Indeed.
There you go. And yes, we have obviously apologies for the technology because, yet again, we haven't got the bulb.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, everyone. So this is Rickmansworth Road, 36 to 40 Rickmansworth Road. Planning permission is sought for the demolition of the 3 existing detached dwellings occupying the site here, and the redevelopment to provide 24 apartments, amenity space and associated car parking. This application was deferred at the request of members on the 4th of October last year, to allow the applicant the opportunity to submit the following information: a revised junction design for the entrance to the site and a highway safety audit for the revised scheme. In the interest of expediency, the Council's own highways engineers, and I've got one of them sat next to me, reviewed the existing design, traffic and speed data, and provided their own alternative design that was then adopted by the applicant's own highway consultant. So they amended the new access, the access design, and some additional pedestrian crossing facilities. A revised internal layout was produced that allowed better access and egress for refuse lorries. So if I just run through the plan, so that's the existing site layout with existing houses on. This is the revised layout, and I do have a plan comparing it with the previously proposed layout. But in the main change is this is wider, and it has a greater radii to allow easier entrance into an exit from the site. It has required these 2 disabled, you can't quite see it there, but there's 2 disabled parking spaces. Originally they were down here, they've had to be relocated over there. So if I just run through the scheme, so that is the amended site layout in greater detail, showing the ground floor of the proposed building. These are the upper floors, and if I just get you through to there's the elevations that were seen last time. So this is the revised road improvements that have been designed by our own highways guys and are now agreed by the applicants. I think I might leave this one up for my highways colleague to talk to. There's a more detailed design of the access into the site, and there's a comparison. So that is the previous original proposed entrance, and this is the revised one. So you can see it's wider, and the design is different, and the layout of the parking has changed as well. So also, I should add, a stage 1 road safety audit was carried out on the revised scheme and passed. Overall, the latest proposal includes extensive modifications that officers feel overcome the reasons the item was deferred to the last committee, and therefore is recommended for approval in line with the conditions and 106 heads of terms set out in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Yes. Could we have that highways layout back up again, I think? The one before that, yeah.
Yes, my colleague mentioned the relocation of the 2 disabled parking spaces within the site. And the idea of that was to widen the area in front of the parking spaces, and this is to allow a refuse vehicle to enter the site, and it provides an adequate turning area for refuse vehicles to come out. Now, the location of the access is more or less the same as on the previous plan. However, the shape's been changed to allow traffic only to come out turning left. So the right turn movements out of the site will be banned. And there are road markings there, as well as signs advising people to turn left only. Additionally, the approaches either side to the access, which are coloured in yellow on that plan, are to have an anti-skid surfacing. Similarly, the hashed areas will have a different colour anti-skid surfacing. The pedestrian access has been changed from the previous plan to the east of the junction, and they're shown on the drawing, new footpaths through the grass verge with tactile pavings and a central island for pedestrians. On the west of the access, there would be an island, which is a smaller island with a keep left sign. The visibility requirements are met because they're the 70 meters to the west and 90 meters to the east. As been mentioned before, the stage 1 safety audit has been carried out and was acceptable. Stage 1 safety audit is carried out on the initial plans. There'll be a stage 2 when the detailed design has been worked out, a stage 3 audit after construction, and stage 4 a year after construction. So there's a 4-stage safety audit, and is passed through the first hurdle. There are also VS signs either side of the development, advising traffic to slow down. So these are the major changes to the previous plan.
We'll hold it there for now, because no doubt members may well have some queries or questions. Who wants to start off on this one? Councillor Edwards?
Very quickly, what are the arrangements for traffic that wishes to leave the flatted block and actually turn right? What route do they follow?
We wouldn't specify a route. They can turn left, and wherever they can turn around at the next junction. It isn't unusual. We have developments, and I can give you an example on West End Road. Just before it's in between the station approach signals and the next set of signals at the White House Gate to RAF Northolt. There's a development where we have the same situation where we ban the right turn out of the site.
Councillor Morgan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Can the road officer please explain the positioning of the crossing for pedestrians? I know this road very, very well. I go on it almost every day, and the speed that vehicles travel around this particular S-bend, because it is an S-bend, and it also dips, and the bends are hidden. And I'm almost certain that where we've positioned or proposing this crossing is actually on top of the hill, so vehicles that are coming up the hill won't actually see people who are trying to cross the road.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Can I
From what I understand is the previous crossing was located to the west of the access, and I'm told that actually members didn't want a pedestrian crossing there, so an alternative crossing was proposed on the other side, and it crosses to the east.
Which is does it top of that road, is it? Yeah. Towards the top of that hill, if I'm in the right place on that road? Yeah. That's where I thought I was. So you would see that as you come down from Northwood Hills because you're on the straight. Yep. And then as you come round the bottom of this bend, you would see it up ahead of you, wouldn't you?
I think all I can say is instead of us determining whether the crossing is safe or not, it's been through a safety audit.
Okay.
And
I'm just trying to help members with where it is.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to help members where it is. But I can see how you can see it, is what I'm coming to. Councillor, are you? You're reflecting there. Are you? Do you anything else? You're okay. Okay. Anybody else? Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Chair. I can see from the position of the disabled parking spaces now that they're going to have to reverse, possibly into the access road. Can you just let us know this distance? Because before they had sufficient space behind them to reverse within the site, so they're not actually reversing possibly into this access way.
Charlie's looking comfortable, but I'm sure the highways crew will. If the refuge vehicle can turn round, sure disabled cars could turn round.
I think the point Councillor Duncan is saying is would the tracking for vehicles parking in the two accessible bays involve going right out into the access road that services all the other flats? Yeah, but I think the councillors just.
This is not sufficient. Do they have to come out here when it's to the entrance?
Yeah, no, I take your point.
The area along the side of these parking spaces is now much wider than before, and there is ample room there to turn within that area without having the need to come out onto the access road.
Right. Okay. So that's a layout that is acceptable. Councillor Edwards.
I welcome the improvements that have been made here. I think it addresses a great deal of the concerns, certainly mine, and I would be prepared to accept this scheme.
So you're going to move off to recommendations at this point?
I'm happy to. I was just lobbing that in the water to see.
Well, I'm not sensing anybody else coming in at the minute.
I might have been a lone voice. That was
well, no, because I'm looking. Nobody else is trying to catching my eye. So, Councillor Oswald.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yeah, I was going to be tempted to go with local knowledge, although I am quite familiar with this road. I've been along it many times, but not as many as Councillor Morgan, obviously. I'm quite happy with that, and if Councillor Edwards is happy to move the recommendation, then I'm quite happy to second it, because we've got the disabled parking issues out of the way. I think that's been covered, and I think that the access and egress there now looks okay, especially for refuse wagons. That's what I think that is showing, isn't it? That's going to be the biggest vehicles that go in there. That seems okay to me, so I'm quite happy to second the recommendations. Thank you.
A deferral. This is a new version.
Yes, thank you, Chair. This application proposes demolition of the existing British Legion building and the erection of 13 family dwelling houses. The existing building is in a poor state of repair and is currently vacant. It is not considered viable for it to continue in its current use. It is understood that the British Legion members now attend organised meetings and events in the nearby, usually in West Drayton Community Centre, which is approximately 90 metres to the south of the site. Local London Plan and NPPF policy all support additional family-sized houses. The new buildings are considered to be well designed and to make a positive contribution to the location of the surrounding area. They're not considered to adversely impact on the setting of the West Drayton Conservation Area or on the nearby Grade 2 listed building Drayton Hall, which is there. So the site is actually outside the conservation area, but obviously abuts it. The council's Conservation and Urban Design Officer has reviewed the proposal and considers that it would be acceptable in design terms. The development has been positioned away from neighbouring properties, and its height and bulk and considered to be satisfactory in terms of impact on neighbours. So that's the site layout. So you can see it's in a terrace here, all with private rear gardens, and a smaller terrace here at the site entrance. In terms of transport, the council's highway engineer is satisfied with the parking arrangements along with the access arrangements. The development provides 20 surface parking spaces, which includes 2 disabled spaces, and there are also 2 motorcycle spaces somewhere on that plan, or towards the end there. The development would reflect the 12 core principles of sustainable development as set out in the NPPF, and the application scheme meets the strategic policy objectives of the London Plan as well as our own local plans and policies. It is therefore recommended that planning permission be granted subject to conditions and completion of a legal agreement as set out in the report. If I just show you a few more plans, so that's a wider view of the layout. So you can see it meets our 21 metre separation requirements in terms of relationship to adjoining properties there. It's a typical layout, internal layout, and that's a typical elevation of a unit on its own. And I think hopefully further along I've got some. There's a cross section, so you can see that the accommodation is over 3 stories, so sort of a townhouse approach to the scheme. And that's an elevation of the terrace in more detail. I'll keep that plan up and I'll show you some photo. There's an aerial photo, and that's the view of the site at the moment. As you can see, it's not in current use and in a rather poor state of repair. Thank you.
Before we start, the head of planning, will you make a comment on affordable on this one?
Yeah, in terms of affordable housing, these are obviously all large units and family units, and 2 of them would be affordable, so we would get 2 large affordable family homes out of this scheme.
Before we start, the other comment I would make is it's also nice to see a scheme coming forward with houses as opposed to all flats, which is what we're seeing a lot of. So it's from just out of sight. Obviously, people have views on the scheme, but it's nice to see a scheme that's actually got some affordable and is houses. Members' views on this one? Councillor Yarrow, please.
Thank you, Chairman. It's just the usual moan that I have, as I'm concerned about the number of parking spaces. I do appreciate that it falls within our rules, but these are big houses, 3 bedrooms. To think that they'll only have 1 car each is sort of cuckoo land. There's going to be more than 1 car, and consequently 20 really isn't enough, but it's within our limits. And another point I'd like to make is it not possible to have one of the disabled places associated with block 2 and not both of them associated with the main blocks? Otherwise, if anybody is disabled in there, they've got a long walk after they park their car.
Let me just ask off, there may be reasons around spacing, but let me just check with officers.
Well, I mean, these are the spaces associated with this block here. I mean, it looks like there's a bit of wriggle room there, so I don't see why you couldn't get a disabled space. So
I think it makes both blocks disabled friendly.
I mean, you'd lose a little bit of landscape verge there, but that one on the end could quite easily be turned into a disabled parking space.
I'm not asking for 3. I mean, I'm still keeping it at 2, but move the one of them to the other side.
If members wanted to make that change, it would be an extra condition, sort of notwithstanding the submitted plans.
Yeah, the one we've done before that requests space on the other side. Councillor Duncan.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just a couple of points. One is that on plot 9 and 10, this is north facing, and I would like to know the distance because it presents a 3-storey development next to plot 8 and the rear windows there. So I assume that there would be overshadowing really for much of the day.
It's 9 and 10. There were 2 at the top.
No, this is north, so these would be south facing. That would be a pretty sunny walk for most of the time. Quite nice.
These 2?
Yeah.
Right.
There are windows and patio doors here, and so this is quite a depth of building.
Right.
You know, more than half the.
I just want to make sure I have the right 2 buildings.
Yeah. So what is that depth, please? Because I think it might be greater than our design guide states.
I'll check the report to see we have it accurately recorded. But looking, I mean, a parking space is 5 metres. And it looks to me as though it's about 5 metres. But I'll see if
Sorry, Chair. That would exceed a single-storey rear extension next to a terrace property. So to have a 3-storey property next door would be, I think, over-dominating. I can see why they've done it, to get more units in, because that's how you get them in. But it is at the expense of that guidance and the living conditions. So it's how much weight we put on that. I personally put quite a bit of weight on it, but it's up to other members. Also, I think if this does go ahead, and I do welcome the scheme, as I'm sure we all do, that it is family housing, most welcome, we would need to remove permitted development, because if there's just 21 metres between existing properties and the rear of these proposed properties, then we would not want them putting on more extensions at the rear, which would reduce the minimum garden area. And they're only providing 60 square metres, and some of these plans look as if you could almost divide some of these bedrooms into 2, making it 4 bedrooms requiring 100 square metres. So okay, there might be a bit of that going on, but at least we've got houses.
I just quickly talking to the head of planning while you were doing that, Councillor Duncan. He has no issues removing PD. To be honest, given the size of the gardens, I think it should come off. We wouldn't want them getting any smaller than they are. You're absolutely just. But your other point I'll pick up in a moment and see how the members feel. Councillor Edwards.
As always, Councillor Duncan has a very keen eye to the detail and has made a very pertinent observation regarding the overshadowing. The balancing side to that would, for me, would probably be redesign, loss of a house and loss of an affordable house. So for me, the balance is, do we accept this overshadowing to gain the additional affordable house? And on balance, looking at the number of affordable houses that we're getting on our developments at the moment, it's a high price, but one that I would be prepared to pay.
Just to clarify a point, we wouldn't be applying HDAS residential extensions, just HDAS residential layouts, because this is a totally new housing scheme. So, and in the HDAS residential layouts, you don't have all the prescriptive stuff about depth of 2-storey extensions, depth of, it's just refers to more broader stuff such as daylight and sunlight, etc. And I think I could have put it better than Councillor Edwards in terms of the more wider context.
I do accept that we're over a barrel here, but you know it's.
I think we are probably in that corner. If we want to take something out, we'll lose some of what we've got, which is quite nice.
That's right, and it is, as Councillor Edwards rightly says, a balancing act. And like him, I would rather have a unit of affordable housing, desperately needed in my ward. Well, everywhere. I don't exclude other wards either. So, fine.
On that basis, are we happy to, someone going to take me forward? Councillor Stead?
Sorry, do you want to raise something? Or are you going to take me forward?
No, I was going to move it forward, Chairman. Yeah. It's, from what we've just been discussing, or apart from what we've just been discussing, it's quite a good scheme. I couldn't see too much wrong with it at all. So I propose we go with the officer's recommendations and the other bits and things.
Amended in the addendum.
Yeah.
There are one or two. And taking off the PD rights. Yeah, we can delegate to the head of planning a notwithstanding condition that just removes the PD rights.
And the disabled parking.
And adjusting the disabled parking space. Yeah, they're the 2 changes we wanted. A seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Oswald. All those in favour, please clearly show. That's unanimously approved. And the meeting will now note that Councillor Higgins is with us for the next item, the last item of the night, so therefore he can take a full part in this discussion, which is Fanuc House, One Station Approach, Ruislip, item 8 in your bundles. Neil, when you're ready.
Excuse me. Thank you. This application seeks the demolition of an existing vacant office building and the redevelopment of the site to provide a 4-storey building with basement parking comprising 40 residential units. The application site is located at the southern end of Ruislip Town Centre and lies adjacent to the Grade 2 listed Ruislip Underground Station and to the south of the Ruislip Village Conservation Area. So that's the listed station with the conservation area up here. And the site comprises a modest 2-storey office building. There are no objections to the loss of the office use or the building, which is little architectural or historical merit. That will come out in the photographs when I show you them. And there are no objections in principle to the site's residential redevelopment. Following a number of pre-application submissions and a large number of revisions to the current application, it is considered that the proposed building achieves an appropriate scale, massing and design for this prominent and sensitive site. The Council's Conservation and Urban Design Officers raise no further concerns with the scheme, subject to detailed design considerations and use of materials which are controlled by condition. That's a layout of the proposed building, but I think if I can show you, so that's the site layout, so that's the proposed building here. So that's the site with landscaping, proposed landscaping. This is station approach, which is a bus waiting area. Train stations down here. So you've got sort of a wide, broad C-shaped building. This is existing residential development to the east of the site. The scheme would not harm residential amenities of adjoining occupiers, although the scheme is slightly deficient in terms of satisfying amenity space standards. This scheme would predominantly provide studio and 1-bed flat accommodation within a town centre location, where in such circumstances design guidance advises that amenity space standards can be applied more flexibly. So at the moment, as submitted, the scheme achieves about 90% of our standard amenity space standard, which is actually quite high for a town centre scheme. It does rely on balconies to achieve that, and it includes some balconies along the face of the building, which will come out more in the well, that's fine. So that's at ground floor. If I go up, you'll see that there are balconies along here. So this is the station approach, which includes the bus waiting area. So those are the balconies proposed on that elevation. If I show you an elevation, so that's the elevation that is facing towards them. So you can just about make out the balconies. Although the scheme is slightly deficient in terms of... Okay, so bearing this in mind, it's because the scheme would all units have a good sized balconies and a good sized communal space being provided, which together amount to approximately 90% of the amenity space requirement. It is considered that the scheme would provide an appropriate amount of amenity space, and the standard residential amenity afforded for its future occupiers would be satisfactory. I should also point out there is a park within easy walking distance of this site as well. The scheme would provide an appropriate level of off-street parking in this area, which has a high PTAL score, and the trip generation would not be detrimental to highway efficiency and or the safety as compared to the existing chip generation of the office building. The scheme has been carefully designed with the building raised, allowing its southern end, so it's been raised at its southern end to allow floodwaters to go underneath the building. So as you're probably aware, this area is prone to periodic flooding and provides appropriate mitigation so the development would not result in flooding elsewhere. The scheme does now have the support of our flood advisor. The scheme would also safeguard the most important trees and ecological features on site, and will provide additional trees and comprehensive landscaping, and includes a green roof. A total of 31 spaces are proposed, with 20 spaces including 4 disabled spaces within the basement. 6 spaces are proposed. I'll go back to the site layout. 6 spaces are proposed alongside of the entrance. Access to the basement is via a car lift here. And there are also additional 5 spaces, which I'll need to go back to more this site plan. So you can see that these 5 spaces are currently leased to the office, so are in the ownership or long lease of the developer. So they will be retained and used for parking, probably more appropriate for visitors than for occupiers, but they do count towards the parking requirement, and that achieves a parking ratio of 0.775 spaces per unit, which our highways colleagues advise is appropriate given the high P-tail, the 4 to 5 P-tail of this site. Although the scheme does not provide any affordable housing, the scheme is supported by a financial viability appraisal which has been independently assessed, and it has been confirmed that although the scheme that a scheme including affordable housing would not be viable. If the scheme is delayed, a review mechanism is needed to review the finances of the scheme, so that forms part of the Section 106 agreement, so we do have a review mechanism. The scheme does make contribution towards construction training, a travel plan bond, and towards public realm improvements in the town centre. The application is accordingly recommended for approval subject to the 106 heads of terms and planning conditions set out in the report and as amended in the addendum. Thank you.
I draw members' attention to the substantial addendum on this one, including changes to conditions and additional comments from the Right Residents Association, so make sure you've got those. I think there are some queries on the S106, but we'll pick that up in a minute. Who wants to start me off with this one? Oswald.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Well, I think it is certainly be in keeping with what's already there, quite familiar with what's there already. I'm just surprised that out of 40 units, we're not getting any affordable. I find that, I find that a bit disturbing, really. And it does say in the recommendation on page 89, under recommendations is 5, affordable housing review mechanism. Well, wasn't it triggered, and why didn't we get any affordable out of this? Thank you.
Yes, that review mechanism kicks in if there's a significant delay in bringing this scheme forward, and so that's intended to capture any uplift in values. So if there's a deliberate or unforeseen delay in bringing the scheme forward, we get the opportunity to capture any increase in value that might make the scheme more viable and allow a proportion of affordable housing or a payment in lieu of that affordable housing.
Okay. Views? Councillor?
I similarly agree with Councillor Oswald concerning the affordable housing. It does surprise me that a scheme of 40 flats, bed sitting single, we can't squeeze some out, and it might be something to do with our assessment of the actual process, but that's outside of this meeting. We have to take it at face value. At this moment in time, there are some issues with the development that I'm not wholly comfortable with. In terms of the principle, I'm okay with flatted development in this location with regard to the height, although residents have drawn our attention to their concerns of its over-dominance of the station. I think the transition between the higher King's Lodge and the flats is reasonable. So, in the ballpark, this is the right development. However, Station Approach is a busy bus terminal. The buses will be sat there. You're talking about double-decker buses parked outside blocks of flats that are metres apart. That concerns me with regards to the impacts on privacy, with regards to sitting out and enjoying the balcony, the extent to which that is usable. That is a concern. I think also I have some unanswered questions regarding flooding. The report talks about some tidying up that needs to be done. Well, I would like to see the tidying up done before we agree it, because of the high risk of flooding in this area and because of the high resident concern. So at this moment in time, I'm not saying never, but I am saying I think there's a little bit of work to be done yet.
Okay. Sorry, the tidying up has been done on the flooding. It's just that obviously our consultees, they do comments and revised plans come, and but the addendum picks up all the final reports and drawing numbers. So
are we fully happy the flooding issue has been
dealt with? Yeah, the flooding issue has been
bottomed out
and dealt with on this application.
Sorry, was that since the officer report was written? Because there's comments in the officer's report, not the officer's comments, but the report itself. that says there are unanswered questions.
Which
7.17.
Yeah. So
does the addendum cover 717?
Entirely.
What committee is determining is the report plus the addendum, and what it's perhaps saying in a long-handed way, and I hope to say more succinctly, is that the information in the addendum is basically saying that we have sorted out the flood and water management issues. Although I appreciate it's not actually
that explicit.
Not that explicit, but I can assure members that we have a tick in the box from the council's flood and water management officer.
Excellent. But I would like to see the evidence of that, and at this moment in time, I'm not comfortable.
Okay, let's talk about these balconies because that's come up already. So let's start down that one for a minute. We've got balconies. I've got to say I for one would have issues with the highway comment that buses have suddenly become extremely green and don't produce any diesel fumes, because there must be new buses that I haven't met yet. I know they're coming, but I don't think they're quite got to Ruislip. At least they hadn't this morning. So you've got a bus parking area, a bus stand area, and double-deckers and lots of them coming in now. It's a very, very busy bus area, and we're suggesting that people will have balconies. We've already got mechanical ventilation in this, which suggests air quality, which I'm sure Councillor Duncan will come to in a moment. But yet we're suggesting it might be a suitable way to sit out and enjoy your amenity. Doesn't sit. And there was the site not very far from this one where we deleted balconies about 18 months ago, I seem to remember. In fact, across the road from this one. So, and the other thing, it's personal to me, but I tend to find that where balconies are not used or suitable for sitting out on, and there are many along West End Road, they become used as storage areas, because that's what people do with them. If you're not going to use them for one thing, use them for something else. So, yeah. And also it is, as you say, very close to a road with double-decker buses outside, which is not great. Air quality, yeah. So, okay. The other one that, and I note the access officer's comment, but it still doesn't sit well with me. The disabled parking for this is in the basement. Basement access is a car lift and a lift. So if anything goes wrong with either of those, or both of those, or you get down there and the lift up doesn't work, you're kind of stuck. I don't understand why the disabled parking is not at ground level.
What the access officer is saying is that can't be a refusal reason, to put it bluntly. So there are issues that members could discuss with regard to the scheme, whether you're happy with the appearance of the development and things like that, which if members were to have an issue, that could be something. But in terms of the access issue, the access officers, I think, again, to put it bluntly, their view is that's not something that they'd be able to back up at appeal.
But if they were looking at the scheme again, it might be a design feature that could change.
The overriding issue with the site is it's quite a compact site, and obviously we've got to be mindful of the distances between this development and the adjoining development. We've got our minimum internal floor sizes. We're obviously trying to maximise the number of parking spaces we can. And obviously also the external amenity space. So it's difficult to change the scheme.
Okay. I would just, fit particularly well, and I don't think it sit particularly well with disabled people. The other one is there's at least one unit on this that's the obscured glazing doesn't work, isn't there? And is that sorted? I think we have one unit that is obscured glazed all the way around.
I'm going to mention at some point that, and I'll explain, Neil's handed up the pointer. So there is an issue that we couldn't put on the addendum because I don't think it can be dealt with by condition. But if members were to approve the scheme, I'd want delegated authority to get a minor plan change. So there needs to be some defensive space behind the bedrooms of Unit 8. And the annotation to obscure windows needs to be removed from the plan. These are ground floor windows, so there's no issue with overlooking. It's just a matter of ensuring that there's appropriate privacy for the occupiers through an area of defensive space. which already exists to other flats with small private garden areas. But I think it's a bit complicated for a kind of notwithstanding condition to be better dealt with through a delegation to myself to get a plan change before an approval were issued.
Okay, so we've got, that's one issue. Members have expressed some discomfort about the balconies down that side, so that's two issues. Can I take two more, and then Councillor Higgins no doubt has got some more for me, because I'm sure he has with this one. In the S106, I've just got two queries, because I just don't understand why they're there. No doubt someone will explain them to me. Delivery and servicing plan for 40 offices, I'm just wondering what that is. Bear in mind there's a condition that requires amendments to the bin store, which is the only servicing I can think of on this one, but unless someone's got something I'm escaping. Neil, have we got something it's escaping me?
No, I mean, I think
sorry, delivery and service plan was submitted with the original application, and I think our colleagues found it deficient in some ways, and
well, I'd say, why do we need one?
It's been, yeah.
I mean, this is a standard residential development. The only servicing I can think of, the big servicing, will be refuge.
Well, the only regular servicing, occasional deliveries, but
is refuge. Yeah. And we're saying we want an amendment to the bin store condition just to make sure the bins can come down a ramp.
Yeah, I mean, that could be expanded to cover, the management of the refuse collection as well.
Well, let's look at whether that's appropriate. We have a resi scheme. I'm not sure we're demanding that they do anything, so why have we got a travel bond? Help me.
So that's coming from my ways.
I know it's coming my ways, I've worked that one out, but I'm just asking them to explain their logic to me, because it's defeated me.
Well, the site's located in an area of PTL 4-5, close to the station, so and I don't see any purpose being served, because the parking spaces are all going to be fixed if the development is approved.
So the travel bond doesn't have a lot of useful purpose.
There's not much scope really to gain anything.
Right. I think we know what goes with that then. Right, so that's those two. Councillor Higgins, do you want to...
I mean, I don't have anything to add, but apart from this is probably a dog's dinner really, but the problem, I mean, it's okay with officers telling me, well, we can't refuse it on reasons of parking, but then on the other hand you're asking for delegated authority to change something in the back of it because it wasn't right. To my view is this is not right, and it should either be withdrawn or deferred. Whichever it is, I don't really care. I don't think it's for us to actually debate something that is in such a mess, and we're asking them to make a decision on it.
I think, Councillor Higgins, I think you've nailed it. I think this is struggling at the moment. It needs a plan amendment at least. I think we need to look at the station approach side of it again, in terms of whether those balconies are appropriate. Amenity space in town centres, I don't know how other people view. I can be persuaded on amenity space in town centre locations, because quite often there isn't any. Particularly on 1 and 2 beds. If we had lots of 3 bedders in here, then I would have a very different argument. But lots of studios and 1 beds, so I'm not sure whether those balconies serve any purpose, and whether or not, in the course of the design, it would be possible to get a better defensible space along station approach, possibly. Well, again, it would just improve the overall... I mean, I think where we all are with this, it's kind of one of those schemes that it's going along the right track-ish, but may not be there.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I don't think I want to refuse this. I don't think that probably wouldn't get us anywhere. I think I'd like this deferred, and for them to come back with a better scheme. Certainly there's an issue with the balconies, because at the end of the day there's going to be, well, a lot of buses, because that's what it is. It's a bus terminal, so they're going to be they're going to be ticking over. There's going to be heat rises, so there's going to be
diesel fumes. I think diesel fumes is where we are.
So I think there's an issue there, and I don't know about this underground car park either with a lift. I'm really not too sure about that. But anyway, I'm prepared to put up with that. But I think that I would like this deferred, and it go back to the applicants to see whether or not they can address some of our concerns, because I think Councillor Higgins is right. It's a bit of a dog's dinner, basically. although I did say earlier that it's in keeping with what's already there, and I still believe that.
No, Councillor Oswald, I don't disagree with that. I think the devil is in the detail in this one. I don't think the broad outline of the size of the block, etc. I don't see anyone's got a problem with that. I think it's a bit of the detail, and I accept the access officer's comments. You may not be able to refuse it, but I still think it would make a better scheme if you could get the disabled parking on the ground floor. And while you're having a look at it, there might be a way of achieving that. I don't know. I'm not a design expert. I'm just suggesting that it might make... I just think it would make a better result for the person who's got to use it. That's right. Councillor Duncan, do you want to come back in? Yeah. Sorry, and then Councillor Cohen.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I agree with the points you made completely about air quality. As you know, I'm very reluctant to approve anything. This is a good scheme in some respects, nicely designed, etc. But there are so many matters unresolved, and to me, is this the right place for it? If we're ever going to uphold our air quality standards, surely this is the place where it's going to be tested, in the middle of a bus station where there are going to be diesel fumes for the majority of the day. And we're starting to learn much more about the harmful, damaging effects of that pollution on people. And I know other countries, I think Norway has banned diesel vehicles completely, which it can do because it's only got 4 million people, I believe, living there, so more manageable. Difficult here, I know, but hopefully there will be some move towards something safer. I think if you're living in a property where you can't open the windows unless it be at risk of your health, that's just unacceptable. It defies the very purpose for why it's built. And so I have problems with this location. I think this is the wrong location for it. I know that the property fronting the main road, yes, there's a lot of road traffic going there, but they don't have buses standing, buses picking up passengers, buses waiting, where there's going to be a much higher concentration of fumes. And so for that reason, I just think it's completely unacceptable. I feel extremely uncomfortable voting to approve something that I feel will be harmful to people's health.
Okay. James, before I take Councillor Kernan.
Can I clarify a bit more concerning the layout of the scheme that might help members in their deliberations on this? So I'm going to take the usual step, it's going to be easier for me to get up.
Yep, sure. No.
So if you go along the station approach elevation, this flat here has got dual aspect. This one has that dual aspect through. This one dual aspect through. This one dual aspect through. This one dual aspect through. That one single aspect, and then this one has dual aspect. So you've got one single aspect, and then that obviously carries on through the building. So almost all of them are dual aspects.
So does that mean we can open one set of windows but not the other?
It was just me kind of trying to clarify in the layout terms. I thought it might help.
Wow, I think we got that one. Councillor Curling, sorry. I think I know where we are with this one, but Councillor Curling, do you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. I agree really with a deferral because there are lots of bits and pieces of this that we're really uncomfortable with. If we're moving towards a deferral, can we also add to the list the affordable housing?
I believe there's an explanation, but we can ask for that to be rechecked.
These financial viability appraisals, there's basically kind of rules that need to be followed in terms of the level of developer profit. There's all sorts of technical things like residual land value and a valid financial viability assessment that follows all the rules has been submitted, and it comes out as a development that isn't viable. So there's nothing we can do to get this development to be viable at the number of units. The developer would have to increase the number of units. That would be the only way you'd get affordable housing on this scheme, or to completely alter the using mix such that the value of the scheme went up.
That's been externally checked and validated in the usual ways?
Yeah, so the problem we have is is that you'd basically have to have even more units if you were to try and create a scheme that delivered affordable housing. Or obviously one could say that the way financial viability appraisals.
I don't think we'll get into financial viability appraisals because I don't think I get how I normally get numbers fairly well, but I'm not getting it. But there's clearly a technical explanation in here somewhere.
There isn't.
Whatever. Look, there's obviously technical. We're not going to go there.
The rules have been followed.
If the rules have been followed, there's nothing we can do. Although I understand everybody's concern. I'm going to move this in a moment. Councillor Higgins, are you about to do something useful?
It was amazing to hear someone tell me that a developer's doing this out of the kindness of their heart and they're not going to make any money. I think
they are, but they're making it within the rules, Councillor Higgins.
And I think entitled to a level of developer profits. And
within the rules.
And this is within the allowed levels.
So we actually check that after they've sold everything, yeah? Or do
That's what the review mechanism's all about.
Yeah. Okay.
No, the financial we have a third-party financial viability appraisal. So we have a framework agreement. This council has 3 acknowledged firms that have expertise in this area. They've analysed the financial viability appraisal. It follows all the rules and it comes out as an unviable development proposal. So it is one of those, to coin a phrase, you've got 2 hands tied behind your back.
It is what it is.
And we have some powers in our right to refuse it if we wish, then on the grounds that...
You couldn't refuse a scheme with regard to lack of affordable housing because the financial viability appraisal has been assessed.
So we can refuse it on the grounds of badly designed and not take into account the poisonous fumes that are going into people's houses.
If I understand the feelings of councillors, they'd like officers to negotiate a bit further regarding the scheme,
so
to do all the housekeeping so there isn't a lengthy addendum, and then to bring it back to planning committee.
So I move deferral.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
Thank you very much. Sorry, Councillor Morgan, do you want to add something that we haven't already covered, yeah?
Yes, just very quickly, Mr. Chairman. We mentioned about the disabled parking, but I couldn't see anything about charging points. Could the officers point...
Should be in there. If it's not, that's an omission, Councillor.
It's in the landscaping.
It's in landscaping. Yeah, I thought I'd seen it. It is there. It is there. It is there. Okay, we have a proposal. This one is deferred.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. Don't wish to delay it too much more, but during the deferment, please can we look at the flooding aspect, particularly the 4th paragraph, page 141, and the 7.17. The impact of the basement is unanswered questions.
Well, I think what we're going to ask for is effectively that all the tidying up that's hidden in there is actually in the report proper.
Thank you very much.
So that we actually get a proper considered view. Right, we have proposed and seconded. All those in favour of deferral, please clearly show. Thank you very much. That one's deferred. And you're abstaining, yes, I well understand. Thank you very much for your time. 5 to 7.